some headlines that I've pulled. Which one was done? There you go. I've got some headlines here. See if you can figure out if it was a T or a Z that they used. See if you can figure out if it's a T or a Z. Now, there's no way to know without actually reading the report. Let's look at the top. Studies show diet may trigger adverse behavior in children. Okay? Studies show. Parents will agree with this. What do you think? Do you think that was a Z or a T? And of course, either response can be correct, depending on what you're studying, right? So you might just pick one and say, I think it's this because they studied this. So what do you think? What do you think? Ballpark.
I'd say Z.
Z, good, love it. Why? Tell me again.
Error.
Error, thank you.
Well, because they're either going to have an adverse behavior or they won't. They're either have a steady diet or not.
I love that. So once we've defined adverse behavior, maybe there's a checklist. Maybe there's a checklist we've supplied, say, educators with, and they watch the kids come in, and some of the kids have a quote-unquote bad diet, maybe a bad diet or a dietary change needed kind of thing. These are all definitions we have to define very carefully. So yeah, we could say the percentage of kids showing adverse behavior is higher in this group than in this group. I love that. I would call it a Z for that very reason. Good. Anybody else think it could be a T? Could we do average number of, say, outbursts in a class or outbursts at home after a certain diet, or the average number? That would be T, wouldn't it? Sure, same exact. It would still be discrete because it's counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, in Max's case sometimes 10, 11, 12. Okay? But that's the thing. You can count it, but you also average it or percentage it. Very nice, Eric. Very nice. Good. How about study finds people who multitask are often bad at it? We're going to analyze this one in class. I like this one. This was done by Stanford a couple of years ago. What do you think was done there? Some kind of a Z or some kind of a T, a proportion or an average? What do you think was studied? Average. Tell me why, Rose. What your gut's just leaning towards average?
Because it's like depends on what people think, so it's a quality. Like it's continuous.
Oh, gotcha. So you're talking, and actually, believe it or not, they timed things in this. So it was continuous, so it was average, at least for part of the study. They defined it as heavy and light media multitaskers. Heavy and light media multitaskers. And it was interesting because that definition is you have to be careful about what you define as a heavy and light media multitasker. But they also then timed them and how long it took them to correctly do tasks. And the ones that were heavy media multitaskers took longer to correctly perform the tasks, which was wrapped up very succinctly with people who multitask suck at multitasking. That was kind of the idea. And if you multitask, you're probably doing everything, but you're doing it all pretty poorly, as opposed to doing one or two things correct. Now, of course, all of us know anecdotal evidence to the contrary. My wife, for example, she can watch television, play a board game with my son, and balance a checkbook. And we still have our house and our money, which means she's balancing the checkbook correctly. Max beats her occasionally, but she crushes him most of the time. And she's watching television. So the woman can do three things at once. Of course, that's part of being a mother, too. But this is anecdotal, hardly statistical evidence. It's anecdotal evidence. So there's another study. Good! Here's another one. Vitamin supplements don't fight cancer, studies show. Notice the word study show, keep popping up. Good, that's what we're getting into now, that's part of the course. Vitamin supplements, what do you think? Average or proportion? What do you often hear about with cancer? Cancer, what? What about cancer is often talked about? I mean, you guys might not hear about it as much out here. In Delaware, it was always, Delaware for years had the highest incidence of cancer in the country per capita. Which meant we were talking about cancer what?
Rates.
Cancer rates. Per capita, it means per, say, 1,000 or per 100 people. Delaware had the most people in the country as a percentage infected with cancer for years. I think it's fallen off now. It's in the top 5 still. Delaware is a tiny state. It's tiny. It's the second smallest. But it had the highest, for years, the highest concentration of cancer rate. Why? Lots of things to talk about there. Lots of things to talk about there. What's that? We have 0 nuclear power plants.
Really?
No, we have plenty of chemical companies that for hundreds of years dumped their crap into our waterways. I went fishing this past summer. My old childhood stream I used to fish in. Fly fishing. I went out to fly fishing. I fly right home. This is going to be great. Catching sunnies, catching trout. Look up the signs. It is not recommended you eat more than 8 ounces of fish from this stream each year. One of the reasons we moved out here was to get into some clean water and some clean air. So anyway, I'm thinking percentages, fluoride affects the brain, studies show, studies show, studies show, studies show. Breakfast makes better students, studies show. Studies show 1 in 100 kids have autism. We've talked about this one before. It's up from the previously accepted 1 in 150 estimate. I include this one because this is a totally crap headline. You remember why it jumped from 1 in 150 to 1 in 100?
Because they expanded that.
They expanded the definition of autistic. They included Asperger's as autism now, which immediately bumps the numbers up. So I include that. That's not a study. That's a poor interpretation of a definition. So they call it a study, studies show, but it's not a study. It's simply a reclassification. It's like saying, I'm not going to call Ryan Roger. Studies now show that there is 100% more Roger in this room than there was before. It's ridiculous. It's a redefinition. Roger. What was that? Studies show, we'll analyze this one in this class too. 1 dose of H1N1 vaccine may be enough. Remember H1N1 was all the rage about 3 or 4 years ago. Bird flu or swine flu? I forget which one it was.
Swine.
Was that swine? Yes. Everybody freaked out about swine flu. Oh my God, swine flu! I think it killed 2 people. Whereas the normal flu killed a couple thousand. It was the flu. It was a very mild case of the flu, but it was media stirred no frenzy, and then they discovered that, oh my God, we don't even need as much vaccines as we think we do. We'll analyze that together in class. That's okay. Exactly. Who's getting paid for this? Studies show coffee is good.
Yeah.
Studies show coffee is bad. You see? But the thing is that it's not just good or bad. Good for physical and mental health, bad for diabetes sufferers. So good and bad are sliding scale relative. You can't just say good and bad. I'm with you, Kayla. Hell yeah. Love my coffee. Okay. So I guess what I want to do is I want you guys to think about something right now. This is a band called NoFX from LA, I believe, which would explain a lot about them. One of my favorite bands of all time. I want you to listen to one of their songs, because these guys succinctly wrap up the idea of what is called hypothesis testing in the first verse of one of their songs. Check this out, it's brilliant. And then, one of the rest as well.
Everyone's out doing cynical. When you see the end, don't justify the means. It's just that 180 degrees.
Any NoFX fans? Anybody? Got one. Good. 2. We got 2. Beautiful. One of their greatest songs. And it goes on a bit longer than that. But I don't care about the rest of it. I mean, it's a great song. But this 4 lines right here, these 4 lines, completely wrap up every statistical study that is ever done that you read about in the papers. Via something called a contradiction. It's via something called a contradiction. You see the 180 degrees in there? We've often heard that phrase before. What does it mean when something goes 180 degrees? What is it 180 degrees from?
Turns around.
It turns around 0 degrees or north, 180 degrees or south by definition of our geometric definition of degrees. So going 180 degrees from something means you change your viewpoint from what it was to exactly the opposite of what it was. That is exactly how statistics studies work. They start with a belief, a status quo belief, if you will. A belief that nothing has changed. A belief that everything is exactly the same. If I take this drug for headaches, it's not going to fix the headache because that drug is not effective. Then we do a study on that drug. We do a study on that drug, and all of a sudden, the end doesn't justify the means, which means we're expecting headaches to not get better, but they do. So what do we then have to adjust our thinking to believe? That the drug is actually working. We go in believing it's not, we come out believing it does, because the data that we got from the study doesn't agree with the belief that nothing's actually going on. Now, that might be a little bit much to absorb in the first, so I'd like to do one last thing for you today, if it's okay. And one of you guys grab that lace, just take it on real quick. Thanks. I want to leave you with a thought. And rather than doing a statistical proof, because this is brand new stuff, I want to do a geometric problem for you. I want to do a geometric problem for you. Actually, I want to show you a picture first, too. I'll show you a picture first. Anybody ever throw discus in high school? Shot put discus, the field events of track and field? Nobody? It's okay. I tried. I wanted to run spring track, but I couldn't run very fast at the time. I wasn't fast enough to keep with distance guys. I definitely wasn't fast enough to hang with the sprinters. So they got me to throw a shot put. Yeah, I wasn't very successful at that. Not quite the right body type for that. But I saw these. There was no javelin in my school, probably because it's too much of an urban area, too many potential for death. So I tried throwing discus, and I noticed that I tried for about a year, and I had a hard time because we practiced right by a very busy street, Broom Street. Was it 18th? It was either 18th and Broom. I forget which one it was. And you know, I'd line up in the, gonna throw it that way, and I'm lining up in the little circle, and you get to spin, and you start, is it this way? I think it was this way. Boo, 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 and you let go, and discus tries to go that way. I had a bit of a hard time. I always went that way. Because I'm thinking, you know, you gotta let this damn thing go, and I would let it go where I thought you had to let it go, which was at the height of the extension of the arm. Now the problem is, if you're spinning around in a circle and you let the discus go here, where's it going to go? I thought it would go that way. It was actually going that way. Hence, why I was putting windows out in cars. I'm letting the damn thing go in the direction I want it to go. It's flying off at 90 degrees to where I think it goes. And the next year after I stopped throwing discus, I noticed they also put a big cage around discus throwing area. A Sean Hole Memorial cage. What I want to do is, I want to prove to you why that happens. And the reason why I want to do that, it's a geometric proof. It's a geometric proof. But the reason I want to do it is because if you can understand this proof, you will understand the remaining 7.5 weeks of this class with me with no problem. Okay? So here's what we're going to prove. If you take a circle, pretend that's a circle. It's circle-ish. The circle has a center. I'm going to draw what's called a tangent line to that. So you don't have to draw, you don't have to write this down, friends. Just try to follow the logic. I'm not going to make you do geometry in this class. I want you to follow the line of reasoning that I'm about to do. Okay? There's a tangent line. A tangent line to the circle. A tangent line on a circle barely touches at exactly one point of the circle. So it's like when your car is riding down the road, essentially you're sitting on one point of contact on each of the 4 tires. Imagine that. So this is what's going on here. So here's my arm. Here's my arm. There's my hand. This is the flight of the discus. You can prove geometrically. You can prove geometrically that the angle ABC is a right angle. You can prove it. And that's what I want to do today. You can do it in 5 minutes. We're going to do it in 5 minutes. We're going to prove that that angle is 90 degrees. Which would prove why, if I want the discus to go there, I got to let it go here. Because if I let it go here, it's going to fly off at 90 and then do its thing and go correctly the way Ashton throws it, not the way Sean throws it. With me so far? So here's the trick with proving this. It's extraordinarily hard to prove that that's equal to 90 directly. So what you do is, you assume it's not. That's weird. That's weird. You assume that it's not. That's what NoFX was calling the status quo. To hell with your 90 degrees. I don't think it's 90 degrees. I think it's something else. Okay, that's fair enough, right? That's fair enough. So here's what we then have to conclude. If that's not 90, then somewhere else in this diagram, there needs to be a 90-degree angle from this point A. I'm going to call it right here, D. I'm going to call AD the one that makes the 90-degree angle. It has to be somewhere. I mean, on Earth, if you drop something, gravity's going to pull it straight down and form a perpendicular or normal. Any point to any line has a 90-degree angle. It's guaranteed by Euclid. Okay. You guys have used this when you build things using wood. You build a wall for a house. When you build a wall as square as possible, you use diagonals to square it up. You create 90-degree angles. They exist. They have to exist. So I'm going to say that's the one. ADB is instead. Okay, so angle ADB equals 90. To hell with your A, B, C. All right. Now, what's the problem with that drawing? So, I'll extract this triangle. Here's my triangle. A, B, D. 90-degree angle is right here. What is the problem with that drawing, other than the fact that the 90-degree angle is above 90? Well, what's the problem with it? What kind of triangle is this?
What, a right triangle?
It's a right triangle because it has a right angle, right? And if it's a right triangle, what else does it have? What's that funny Greek word? It starts with H. Ends with, there's one, Lindsay. Hypotenuse. Which one's the hypotenuse? Careful, which one is? Not the one that looks like it. Which one has to be the hypotenuse? AB has to be the hypotenuse, doesn't it? Because it's opposite the 90. I know AD looks like it is, but AB has to be because it's opposite the 90. So, AB is the hypotenuse. That means it's longer than any other side in the triangle. By definition of a hypotenuse, it's the longest side. So do you guys agree that by that definition, AB has to be bigger than AD? Has to be, because AD's got to be a shorter side. What's wrong with that statement right there? Look back up here. Let me give you a hint. What's AD made up of?
There's open space.
There it is. AD is made up of AE plus ED, correct? How are AB and AE related to each other? Think circle. Think of me spinning around like a ballerina with my discus in my hand. They're what? They're equal because they're both radii of a circle, right? This and this are the same. That's my arm. That's my arm. So this is equal to this. So using some algebra, I can cancel that out, can't I? I can go, you know, to hell with that, I'm going to cancel it. Shoot, shoot. That means 0 is bigger than ED. Which means this distance out here is negative. What do we call that? What is 500 word I can think of? It's wrong. You can't have negative distances, right? Good, exactly. It's obscure. We call it a fallacy mathematically. So right here, X marks the contradiction. X marks the contradiction. That statement is patently absurd. Which means the statement it came from has to be wrong. Which means the statement it came from, all these statements are wrong. All the way back until we get to what? That every one of these statements is 100% correct if this is true. But these can't be correct. Therefore, what does that tell us about this? That it's incorrect. So, in other words, we just proved that angle ABC can't not be 90 degrees. That sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? We proved that it can't not be 90 degrees. Therefore, if it can't not be... Say it again, Chris. Oh, it's Lindsay, I'm sorry. It is 90 degrees. If it can't not be some other measurement, the only measurement left is 90. Which means we prove that it has to be 90 essentially by disproving everything else. That's a proof by contradiction. That's also the only geometry I'll torture you with. I'm sorry, Drew. I felt the energy in this room just drain right now. Oh my God, he's putting circles and angles. What the hell is wrong with this guy? Don't worry. We'll start bringing statistics in on Thursday. I promise you that. For Thursday, bring T interval homework for me. I'll make sure the links are working for the homework videos for you. Because I made some of those yesterday for you. I'll make sure they work.
Projects are due too, right?
Projects Thursday, yeah. Yeah, so remember the quiz. We pushed the quiz back to Tuesday. You came in a little late. You didn't hear that, Kelly.
No.
The quiz that's due on Thursday, I gave you an option to turn it into the following Tuesday.
Okay.
So that way you got too much to do on one day. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
Coolio? And yeah, go ahead and turn the make a pile somewhere. That's fine. Separate pile. That's perfect, guys. You're in class quiz. Make a little pile up here. And I will make sure I fix that homework page. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Oh, it doesn't even count.
Yeah, I think I have like,
Sure.
like,
Fix it, turn it next time, it's fine.
is that okay?
Yeah, it's totally fine, totally
Because
fine.
I was like, when I went over one more, because I was doing that six.
Yeah, it's in tests instead of intervals, yeah.
Well, it's the last one. 13. Tell you to turn it.
Oh, is that one?
I mean, I don't know, dude. The cycle was since that those numbers were. Since, I guess so. Since the first ones were.
Right after, we'll be there. Yeah.
No.
Sound good?
Some issues with this regular.
Well, the first two, I guess, for us were.
Yes, I know, it's a little twitchy on that.
Yeah.
But we'll take a look.
You know, adjusting the frequency, but for like the data.
Yes, no, maybe it was.
Because of the frequency distribution.
I don't remember.
We'll have to figure out how you do that. Come on, Bob, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
We'll make it work, we'll make it work.
Thank you.
So this turns in.
No, go ahead, turn it, that's fine. Put them in this pile here. Perfect. Fix.
If I said the Langoliers earlier, I actually meant the Stained. Stained is the one we're talking about.
Oh, I read that one too. I have that book at home too, so it's a stand, okay.
I'm pretty sure because they were talking about
It's funny,
all
because-
these psychic dreams, and so.
And the ones that lived.
Yeah, the one character brings up this supposed study and says, you know, a specific number of people didn't get on planes or whatever.
It's funny, because Langoliers makes no sense, because it's about a plane.
Yeah, yeah.
But, it's interesting to stand, that's even easier to disprove, only because, I'm assuming it was the survivor sitting around talking about that.
They all that were, so they were survivors of the plague.
Of the plague, correct?
Right.
And they were trying to figure out, I'm assuming, why.
Well, they were talking about, because they were all having the same dream.
Oh,
It's
gotcha.
possibly a psychic power.
Sure, maybe that's what kept them around.
Yeah, so there was this study of people were psychically, you know, detecting
Somehow connected. Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to go back and look at that. That one, it's been even longer since I read that one. So,
Yeah.
go back in my life ago.
I see this programs from you.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Let's grab the machine. There we go. Alright, move her up. Off.
So you have to get a t-shirt edition somewhere else? Like a huge slot on top?
I don't know what the hell this is, man. It's just, it's technology. Is all it is. Yeah, it's annoying as hell. Why they don't just, it's fraught with problems.
Really?
Because that little junction is like from 1984. Like the old Nintendo games you plug cartridges into. And you remember how you blow one of those things? You probably don't actually, you guys are so damn young now. But like blowing it, like keeping clean, it's such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I want to start using Excel one of these days. That's what I want in these classes. You guys sit in front of a computer instead of not screwing around with this crap.
I still have an N64. They're all-
Oh, dude, they're great. That's an Atari 2600. I love them. But there's limitations.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, super fun, but for doing statistics, not the greatest.
Of course, in the stand, it was implied the reason they survived the plague was because they had psychic power.
I don't remember that either. I'm gonna read this again.
It's not.
It's not clear.
Yeah,
It's not
something the outside
obvious.
says.
Right.
They never really. That's not the point of the book. They just. It's something you kind of, if you're reading it.
I
They
gotcha.
all have the, you know.
Same dreams, same
Yeah.
thoughts, same
Yeah,
feelings.
animals that were too domesticated were the ones who died, but the wild animals were more in tune.
See, I don't remember this at all.
Yeah.
I need to go back and.
I read The Stand like 5 or 6 times, so.
I read the unedited, I read the abridged version, and then he released the unabridged version.
Yeah.
I read them both, and it's been since then that
I own the unabridged version, so.
Yeah.
Or the, you know, one he re-released with newer details too, like it was years later.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it's the unabridged version that does that, 'cause he like re-released it. and
Did he release
actually-
it? Oh, did I ever stop that camera?
Am I still going to listen to this?
Still going?
Stand?
It is. Talk about the stand. That's.